Hello and welcome back to Portugal, and the third and final video in the series of how I vlog. I'm just out for a walk with little Milo. Milo, oh, I'm in the shot. Oh, thanks Milo. Who I am dog sitting for my friend Shana while she's in the United States. So to crack straight on with this video, what this is going to be about is, first of all, introduce the three kinds of video that I do on my channel. So there are actually three kinds, I don't know if you've noticed. Now in the previous video, I went into how I shoot my videos. And so in this one, we'll talk a little bit then about file management, how I manage my files. Then we'll talk a little bit about the editing process, going on to music, how I choose my music and where I get it from. And then finally talking a little bit about uploading your video to YouTube. So we'll crack on with introducing the three kinds of video that I do on my channel. So to introduce the three kinds of video I do on my channel, first of all we have the planned video, and that's exactly what you're watching now. A video that I've thought about, I've scripted, I've roughed out what I'm going to say, and I know what's going to happen, fair enough. The second kind of video is quite the opposite, the unplanned video, and it's basically where I take a lot of footage of what's happening and then I put that footage to music. And then the third kind of video I make is the music video, which is the other way around to the one we just had, where I take a piece of music that I like and then I add the video to that. So now we'll go through each one in turn about how I do each one. So planned videos, well, this is a planned video, but there's always other elements that go into it. So you still get unplanned elements going into a planned video, the same as you'll get planned elements going into an unplanned video. Let me explain. This one is a planned video. It basically means I've thought about what I'm going to say. I've done any research I need to do already. I've noted down all the key points, and then from those key points, I've made a script. Here's my script. Well, there's not really a script because I don't do very well with scripts. I don't like it when you see people sort of reading their script off the camera, because it looks quite, you can tell that they're reading a script, and I actually don't like that. I like to waffle, as you may have noticed. So I just write down the key points and then refer to them. And then when I refer to my notes, I edit that bit out, except this one. So basically what you do is you sit down and you film your script, you're talking to the camera, but that's going to be really boring for people just to watch you and the camera all the time. So then what you do is, once you've done your story, your script, whatever, is you think about B-roll. And B-roll is when you put other kind of footage, maybe to illustrate a point, over the footage of you talking. So what I'm doing now is, because I'm taking Milo for a walk, I'm going to do some nice little B-roll images of just us going for a walk and where we are here in Portugal, and put that in over the top of what I'm saying now, so that you're not just looking at my ugly mug, you've got something to entertain you while you're listening to what I'm saying. So that is basically how I plan a planned video, even though there's a few unplanned elements in there. Now let's talk about how I do an unplanned video, which is where I film the story and then put the story to music and or a script. Bye bye. Right, so that was the planned vlogs, and now we're going to talk about the unplanned vlogs. But they're not truly unplanned because you still have some kind of idea that something's going to happen. Let's get that sun out of the way. So for example, when I took the flight to Barra, I knew I was going to be driving to Eriskay. I knew I was going to be getting a ferry from Eriskay over to Barra. I knew I was going to be checking in. I knew I was going to be getting on the plane, but I didn't know exactly what was going to happen. So you still have this outline plan in your head, but then you don't exactly know exactly what's going to happen. Now, the way I sort of do those kind of vlogs is I film tons more than I need. Loads and loads and loads and loads of footage. And then what I do is, once I've got all the footage together, put it into the editing suite, put it all on the timeline, look at it, and then I will choose the music to suit the footage I've got, or maybe do a voiceover, or maybe do subtitles. As you progress, hopefully you can do fewer and fewer subtitles and voiceovers because you can start telling the story with images. Now, hopefully, if it worked, I can give you an example of that. Rather than doing a voiceover or saying to you that I've left Dougal, I've left Milo back at the apartment, what I did was I just did a little shot of waving goodbye to him and closing the door. Now hopefully that told you that I have left Milo back at the apartment, and that's roughly how I do the unplanned vlogs. And also what you might need to do is you might need to film an introduction and a conclusion once you've got that story together. So you may have to do a little bit more filming afterwards just to introduce what the story is and to conclude, as I think I did on the one where I came down from the Outer Hebrides. So that's the unplanned kind of a vlog. Next vlog I want to talk about, next kind of video I want to talk about, the third and final video, is rather than setting the music to the video, is where I set the video to the music. Right, so finally, while I wait for the ferry, let's talk about music videos. Now, these are by design planned videos, but instead of putting music to the video, I put video to the music. So what I do is when I find a piece of music that really stands out or really talks to me, sometimes I paint this sort of picture in my head, and then I just want to put that music to video, and I start planning everything in my head, and eventually I'll start doing a shoot list. One of the first things to do is you count sort of how many clips of footage that you'll need for that video. So you go through, you listen to it, you say, right, we need one there, we need one there, we need one there. So you might need 100 or 120 clips. You also make a note of, do they need to be fast moving? Do they need to be slow and relaxing? And just like the sort of planned and unplanned videos, it evolves as it goes along. So some of the shoot list will change as you go along. And also, you also need to film a lot more than you think you're going to need, because things will happen as you're out shooting, and it would be a huge shame to not put something in that's great because it's not on your list. So just film everything once again, but have a very strong idea of what you're going to film. Make a list, a shoot list. Start putting that to the music in your editing suite or in your mind even. And then as you go along, you may think, oh, actually I need something else there, I need something else there. So it kind of evolves as you go along. But just a little word of warning before you go ahead and do that. When you are using copyrighted music, the copyright owner has every right to get your video taken down off YouTube. So you need to be very careful if you're using copyrighted music. For example, I've done a couple of videos to a lovely Gaelic singer's music. I know she's happy with them because there have been other performances by the singer on YouTube that she's not been happy with because the audio was so bad, it didn't make it sound very good, and she had those taken down. But generally, if you've got a good relationship with the artist, like I have with most of the artists that I use music from, then you should have no problem. But just do bear in mind that that artist owns the music, they own the copyright, and they can have your video taken down. So there you have it. They are the three kinds of videos I do: the planned, the unplanned, and the music video. Next thing we're going to talk about is file management. So we have our files, we have our video files, we have our audio files, we've chosen our music, so we've got our music files. You may have images, pictures, you also may have images of the thumbnail that you want to use on YouTube. Then you will also have the completed film once you've finished editing it. What do you do with all these files? What I used to do, which is wrong, is I'd leave the audio in audio files, and I'd leave the video in video files, and I'd leave the picture in the image files. I was given two great pieces of advice by a terrific guy called Peter Sims from 7 Video of Shrewsbury, and those two fantastic pieces of advice were thus. Number one, every clip you film, even if it's for a tiny segment in your video, make it at least 7 seconds in duration. So when you're filming, make that clip 7 seconds. And then the second most brilliant piece of advice he ever gave me was keep all your files for each project in one place. So if you're just setting out and you're going to start practicing, and say for example you're going to do a little video about your garden, you would actually set up a new file on your computer called garden, and that's where you would put all of the video footage, all of the music you're going to use for that video, all the sound files, anything like that. So that's basically the most important piece of advice as regards to file management, and that is put everything in one place for each movie. And if you use that footage again for something else, copy it. And so it's in two places, and therefore every time you want to go and refer to something, it's there. If you're very clever, you can also put tags on it, and so you can find it quickly. Unfortunately, I'm not that clever. My filing system, I'm afraid, is up here. If I need a clip, I think, where was I when I filmed that? Oh yes, I was here, and I'll go to that file there. So basically, that is the most important thing about file management. Put all your files for each project in one place. So now you've got all your files, what's the next thing? And the next thing is, of course, editing. So let's now talk about editing. So many people get so wound up about editing, and you have to remember that editing is not the most important part of any video. The most important part of any video is, of course, the story. Editing is only secondary. Don't get hung up on it. Now, when you start editing, it's going to depend a lot on what device you're using, whether you're Windows or Mac. If you're Windows, it's probably going to be Windows Movie Maker. If it's Mac, it's probably going to be iMovie. I started off on Windows using Windows Movie Maker, and then I moved over to Mac and started using iMovie. Both terrific packages, ideal to start with. And really only when you've grown out of those packages, when you can use them to their entirety, and you'll find that they're starting to restrict your creative flow a little bit, that's the time to start thinking about moving on to something else. So if you're Apple, it might be Final Cut Pro, or if you're Windows or Apple, you might even want to move to Adobe Premiere. I've moved on to Final Cut Pro. Some people love it, some people hate it. Personally, I love it.
sometimes is a bit restrictive, but for me, speed is the essence. I want to get the vlogs edited as quickly and as nicely as possible. And interestingly enough, I once did an editing job the year before last at Silverstone Race Circuit, and there I was a team of about 4 or 5 editors. I was the only one using Final Cut Pro. I was with a lot of other people using Adobe Premiere, and even though these guys were graduates and they really knew what they were doing, my workflow was about 3 or 4 times faster than theirs. So I do like Final Cut Pro. Maybe some people find it restrictive. I just find it incredibly fast to work with. So that's why I use Final Cut Pro. Start off using Windows Movie Maker or iMovie. If you are a little bit intimidated, there's no other way than just do it. Just open that package and start learning how to use it. Now, all about learning how to use those packages. The first one is, of course, enlist the aid of the help function in that package. So if there's something you want to know to do, like how to lay down a story or how to edit a clip or something like that, and you don't know how to do it, write it in the help function and do a search on the help function. The second useful resource is, of course, good old YouTube. Look at YouTube, how to make a simple movie with Windows Movie Maker. I'm sure if you put that in, there's going to be plenty of terrific tutorials for you to at least start you off. You don't need to have your first project up as a YouTube video. In fact, I would say it's probably best if you don't. Start with something really simple. Don't even need to use moving images. Why don't you just start using just photos from your photo library, stitching them together with a little bit of music, possibly a little bit of commentary over the top. That would be an ideal way to start. Keep it really simple to start with and then build up from there. One of the greatest resources I use on YouTube for Final Cut Pro, if you're into Final Cut Pro, is a great channel by a chap called Ryan Nangle. Ryan is a terrific guy. He gets straight to the point. He's got loads of free resources on his website. So I'll put a link to Ryan's YouTube channel in the description below for if you are using Final Cut Pro. Other than that, just use the search function on YouTube to find yourself tutorials in the package that you are using. And one of the things you might be doing is, once you've made a few simple movies, you've got used to using the software, you might start thinking about using one of these microphones. I'm currently recording the sound into my phone. Because I'm traveling, I've not brought my sound recorder with me. I'm just recording the sound into my phone. And then you will want to synchronize the sound from the sound files from your phone or your voice recorder to the sound that's coming out of the camera. That's you, the camera, you. It's very interesting to know. I had a comment last week. Someone said, how do I synchronize? And one of the important things to note is that you leave the sound on the camera, because the computer, if the computer is going to synchronize the files for you, is going to take the sound from the video file, take the sound from the audio file and match them. If there is no sound on the video file, it can't synchronize the audio for you. And if it can't synchronize, or there's no synchronize function on your editing package, you may have to do it manually just by putting the audio on the timeline with the video and then just dragging it until it lines up with the lips and the voice, till they line up. But generally, at least on Final Cut Pro, I don't know about other packages, there is a synchronize clip function. Once I've synchronized the clips, I will then split the clips so that you can see the audio from the camera and the audio from the sound recorder, and I will turn down the audio from the camera to 0, so that all that we're getting is the audio from the microphone, not the audio from the camera. Of course, you may want to leave it because there may be atmospheric sounds that are good for the video that are in the camera, not being picked up by the microphone. So again, just play around with it. There is no substitute for just opening that editing package, using the help function, watching some YouTube videos and just doing it. that little blast of voyage voyage there in the railway station brings us nicely onto the subject of music. And as I mentioned before, if you use copyrighted music, you always run the risk of the copyright holder wanting your film taken down off YouTube. So that's a risk, and also there is the possibility that even though that film may be able to be played in your country, it may not have worldwide approval to be played in all countries. So I know, for example, some of my older Airstream videos set to some copyrighted music are not available to view in Germany because their rules are much tighter on copyright than we have in the UK. So the best place to go for music, especially when you're starting off, is YouTube itself and the YouTube Creator Studio. Now you need to be making friends with the Creator Studio if you're making videos for YouTube anyway. So if you go to Creator Studio, go down to the tab that says Create, and there you'll see there's this huge library of all these songs that are free of charge to use on your videos. Some people do prefer to use paid for free music. Music libraries that you pay for generally tend to be a bit more trendy, a bit more on the button than the YouTube video library. But really, to start with, it's a bit like your editing package. Start with the YouTube audio library, find some tracks that you like, and then if you find you've outgrown it, then by all means look at going for a paid for free library. Doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. One last final thing on music, and that is, when I've found some tracks that I like the sound of, I spend a lot of time, as you probably realise, listening to a lot of these tracks and downloading them, is that I put them in an album. I create an album in my music library called YouTube. And then when I'm in my editing package, all I need to do is choose the album YouTube, and I get all of the free music to choose from that I can listen to during the editing process. Excuse me. Honestly, some people have just got no consideration, have they? There I am making a video. What they're doing? Ringing their bell. Ring my bell, Anita Ward. Did you like that little segue there? Now you've made your video and you're going to put it on YouTube. Now, first of all, to be clear, it doesn't have to be public if it's on YouTube. So say, for example, you've made that first video or a private video of your children playing in the garden, you want to share it with your family in Australia or Portugal, and you don't want everyone to see it, you just want certain people to see it. You can do that. You can upload it to YouTube. You select in privacy settings. It can be unlisted, it can be private, or it can be public. So in that case, you would go for unlisted, and then anyone with the link to that video can watch it. It's quite straightforward. As ever, with all of this, if you do get stuck, there's plenty of tutorials online to help you with uploading to YouTube and Creator Studio, of course. So that's one thing. You don't have to have it public, or at least you don't have to have it public straight away. Right, and finally, about comments. If you've put your video as public, you may be receiving comments to your video, thumbs up, thumbs down, things like that. I just want to quickly touch on that before I finish. For a start, you don't actually have to have comments to your video. You can choose to not have comments to your videos, and there's been one or two videos that I've made that I've decided not to accept comments on. The downside of not having comments to your video is, number one, you won't get any feedback, good or bad, and number two is the fact that as far as the algorithm goes, that means how YouTube promotes your video, it will see there's a lot less engagement with your video, and it won't promote your video as much as it might do if you had comments. So, but you don't have to have comments, and if you find you're getting a lot of hurtful comments, delete them and stop taking comments. It's quite simple. It's your channel, it's your rules. You do what you want to do. I don't quite know why I'm vlogging right in the middle of a really busy crossing, but there you go. Now, also as far as comments go, you have to remember the fact that you can't please all the people all the time. Ooh, just shutting the gate on us here. If, for example, you get a comment and someone says, oh, I didn't like the music you chose, and yet you've had 10 people say, I love the music you chose, don't worry about it. Another thing to bear in mind is that if you have comments, it allows people to give you constructive feedback, and it might hurt when you get it, but people giving you constructive feedback are doing you a huge favour. They are not trolls. We'll talk about trolls in a minute. So having comments on will allow people to give you feedback, whether it's, yes, I really enjoyed that, or, well, I kind of enjoyed it, but it would have been better if you'd done A, B, or C. And like I say, just remember you can't please all the people all the time. Now, talking about the nasty subject of trolls, if you have comments on, you do expose yourself to the nasty little rat bags that are trolls. If someone leaves a nasty comment, and I don't mean constructive feedback, it says a lot more about them than it does about you. In my 2 or 3 years of doing YouTube videos, I've had some nasty comments, and not one single nasty comment has come from someone who has actually done any content themselves. So every single one has been from someone who's never actually put any decent content on YouTube themselves. A lot of you who know this channel will have heard me say this a lot of times before, but when I started off on YouTube, I had some great advice from a friend of mine, Anthony, from the channel Break the Twitch. Break the Twitch. And he said, and it's so true, it's so much easier to kick over somebody else's sandcastle than it is to build your own. And that's exactly the truth. So you have to bear that in mind, and that is these sad little people who give you nasty comments. It's because they want to kick over your sandcastle because they're too lazy to build their own. You right, Milo? Okay, that's me back at the apartment just to finally wrap up not only this little video, but also the end of this little series in how I vlog. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you enjoyed watching this particular video as much as I enjoyed making it. As you may have noticed, this is a very new style for me, to do little chunks and then stitch them all together. I haven't got a clue how this is going to work out, so I might watch it when I edit it and think, oh no, this is terrible, or I might like it, the same as you might enjoy it, or you might think, nah, it's too disjointed. But you've got to try new things, and so even now, I'm sorry, am I boring you, Milo? So we're trying something new. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, as ever, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't already. Also, please give us a follow on social media, because with the editing, the YouTube videos usually come out a week or two after I've shot them. So by the time you see this, I will no longer be in Lisbon. So please do give us a follow on Instagram. I'll put a link down there and a link in the description below. And also please give us a follow on Twitter. So that wraps us up now, and it just leaves me now to say, from Lisbon, from Milo, and from me, thanks for tuning in. There. What do you reckon, Milo? Are you excited about this? Yeah. He really is like his cousin who's back home in the UK. You never smile, do you, Milo? Oh, all right. Oh dear. Look at this. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh dear.